in real people serving, living real lives, serving a real God. We believe in building real connections and real relationships with real people, and no better place to do that than at home. So we say welcome home to every one of you radio listeners. It's good to have you tuning in this morning. We are Christ Point Church. We're located on the square in Sparta, and we want you to come and pay us a personal visit. We're going to say we're on the square in Sparta, Tennessee, and our service times are at 9 and 11 a.m., and we will be announcing in the coming couple of weeks where you can visit us in Smithville at the new Smithville campus. So, Ben Lomond viewers, good to have you on board, YouTube, all that other stuff. Good to have you. Now, let me just tell you, I've got to say this before I start. One of the first times I'm talking with Sabrina and Graydon, and I told them, I said, there's two churches that stand out in my mind. I said, I visited two churches in the course of our Christian lives that stood out in my mind, because when you lead in a church, when you're one of the ministers on staff or whatever, you critique everything when you go to another church. You either are sitting there thinking, I'm going to do what they're doing, or I'm not going to do what they're doing. And we've been to some churches that were absolutely multi-million-dollar facilities, and there's nothing I would have wanted from that church except for their building sitting down up here. But there's been places that I've been that impacted me, but I'm going to tell you, every church, and this is the heart of Christ Point Church. Every church that I've ever been to, I don't remember distinctively what song we sang. I don't remember distinctively what the pastor preached on, but I remembered how I was treated at the door. I remember how it affected me at the door. And I was telling Graydon, Sabrina, Tina, and I were telling this, and I said, the two churches that stand out in my mind, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, somewhere in that neighborhood, a church in Florida, we visited on vacation. I said, the way that they greeted us at the door, the way that they overwhelmed us and went overboard on making us feel at home. I said, and the other was a church in Smithville, and I named the church. And Graydon looked at Sabrina, she looked at him, and we had no idea. But they were the outreach pastors at that church, and they organized that outreach at the door. And when I came back and this has been about 7 or 8 years ago, when we came to Christ Point Church, their program is what we said we wanted at this door. So you see how God just works things together. So thank you for putting together our love effect at the door. Al said when we first started, if we don't love people at the door, we fail, and that's exactly right. Putting on the dog. Let's get on with it. There's a parody written a few years back. It's been several years. A guy named Aaron Wilbur. He wrote a song, and the song goes like this. It's a comedy. It's a little bit of a spoof. But the guy's wife wants a new fur coat. Back in the fur coat days, his wife wants a new fur coat, and the husband can't afford one. So what happens as the song goes? You can YouTube it. It's hilarious. As the song goes, he couldn't afford her a fur coat, so the answer ran out in front of him one night on the highway going home. I didn't write the song, but I sure do like it. And as the story goes, the song goes, the neighbor's lost his German Shepherd, but his hide belonged to him. So after a couple of weeks in the basement, get a little trial and error going on. He was able to give his wife a new fur coat, and now when she goes out on town, she's putting on the dog. So that's how the song goes. She's putting on the dog, so that's where this title came from. Putting on the dog. Sometimes, and I'm just going to lay it right out here. I'm not going to hold anything back today. I hope I don't. Sometimes situations, and sometimes relationships, and sometimes dreams just don't turn out the way we had imagined them in the beginning. They just don't. We imagined it being this way. I'm going to tell you some things. You get toward the end of it, and you're like, I really thought I'd have more money by now. I really thought that I would be everything would be paid off by now. I really thought that I would be retired by now. I really didn't think that I would have to help children as much as I did. I really did think that I would have children. So there's a lot of things. Some business people. A lot of business people, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of business people are moving out of business into ministry, and they're saying, I worked my entire productive, vital life in business. I got to the top of the ladder only to realize after I reached the top that I had the ladder leaning against the wrong wall. I'd been working for 25 and 30 years to get to the top of my company, and all the while God had put me in ministry. So sometimes we realize we're on the wrong ladder. So situations and relationships and dreams, sometimes they just don't work out the way we imagine. Sometimes we enter into a season of life excited, and we have a spirit of pleasantness. You know, you enter into that, oh, I'm excited. I have a spirit of pleasantness. And some of us can think back and think of those situations right now. But by the time the end arrives or becomes clearer as it goes by, the journey's become more of a journey of bitterness. It's like, you know, it didn't start out the way it ended. I know people in my life, after 20 years getting divorced, I'm like, why did you, what happened all of a sudden now? Well, I'm finally discovering myself. Well, you needed to have done that with your husband or your wife. You need to figure out who you are together, not apart. So, but I'm a married guy now. Don't think I ain't. You don't hear Tina without Steve. You don't hear Steve without Tina. We're like Bonnie and Clyde. You don't say one without the other. So that's just the way we roll. So I would fight for that, finding yourself together. But let's look at Ruth chapter 1, verses 19, 20, and 21. We're going to stay in Ruth today. And I was reading this back earlier, and God just started putting this together, and I didn't really have an idea why, but as it came together, I started to see some faces. So, the two of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. And when they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" She said to them, "Don't you call me that. Don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara. For the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" I want to go back in order to go forward. I want to go back just a little bit in order to go forward. Naomi has moved. Naomi is a Bethlehemite. She's a Jewish woman, and she's married a prominent Jewish man, has some properties and holding, and they move from there to Moab. So they move away. And it's like, you know, you have this idea, and I know we had this when we're younger, we're going to move away, and we're going to make our millions, and we're going to come back to the class reunion driving our $100,000 car and talking about our $500,000 home and all this stuff. And we want to impress when we come back. She's got none of this going on. She has left Bethlehem earlier, and now she's returning, and she don't have anything. Let me explain what happened. She fell in love. I'm going to say she fell in love. A lot of them were appointed in those days. I'm going to tell you she fell in love, and she married. She had 2 sons. Her sons grew, and they became married, so we know she's not a young woman. She's got some age on her. Her sons married, and they had wives. See, she was living the dream. I'm living the dream. I have a husband. I'm living in a different land. I mean, let me tell you something. If you ever said, "Lord, get me out of here," you know what I'm talking about. If you ever said, "Lord, put me in another place," you know what I'm talking about. I was the very one. Tina was screaming it louder than I was 6 years ago. "Lord, you got to get us out of Sparta." She was screaming it louder than I was, and I was screaming it pretty much under my breath. So the thing is you want to go live in the dream, going somewhere else, live in the dream. See, she had a husband, she had sons, she had people who were able to take care of her the rest of her life. That was security for her. But, see, tragedy begins to start setting in his family, and her husband dies. Her husband dies, and then her 2 sons die. Now, it looks pretty good, living the dream. She's got it going on, and then all of a sudden, the bottom drops out, and she's lost everything. See, all she has left is 2 foreign Moabite daughters-in-law. That's all she's got. And she begins to tell them, "I'm going home. I'm just going to go back home, and I want you to stay here. Your husbands are dead. I released you. You stay here." And they cried and they wept after her. Obviously, she was impactful in their lives. And they cried and they wept after her. And they said, "No, we're going to go with you. We're going to go with you." And she said, "No, I'm an old woman, or older, and I would have to marry somebody, and then if that could ever happen, and then have children if that could ever happen, and they would have to grow to the age of getting married, and you're not going to wait that long. She kind of explained all that. She said, you need to go on and get on with your life and not worry about this old woman. So one of them leaves and goes back to Moab, but the other says, no way. No way. Not having it. Your people are going to be my people. Your problems are going to be my problems. Your issues are my issues. And your God's going to be my God. So we're family and nothing's going to break that. I'm going with you. So she would not leave her side, and that daughter-in-law's name is Ruth. So we have Naomi and Ruth. Now as she returns home years later, she never pictured it quite this way. I never pictured walking in and being embarrassed. I never pictured walking in and to the streets of Bethlehem and people saying, oh, there's Naomi. Oh, look, there's Naomi. Look, Naomi don't have anybody with her. Naomi don't have a husband, and she's dressed in mourning clothing. See, when she's coming back, she's not dressed to find anybody that would look at her. She's dressed in mourning clothing with only a widowed daughter-in-law to show for her many years. So she's coming back into this home of hers, and she has nothing. She's been gone all this while, and she comes back, and they say, oh, that's Naomi, and she says, don't call me Naomi. Well, that's your name. Don't call me Naomi. Naomi in Hebrew means pleasantness. Don't call me Naomi. I'm not pleasant anymore. I don't have a pleasant spirit up on me. I don't feel like being pleasant anymore. Call me Mara. She says, call me Mara. Mara in the Hebrew means bitter. Now she has went from a pleasant person to a bitter person. And she's got to this point to where she's let them know. In other words, she wasn't passive about it. You know what? I'm not happy about this. I've lost my family. I've lost everything that I had. I'm a bitter person. She needed a redeemer. Now, Naomi's life was going great in Moab. She's going great in Moab. Man, she had the mansion, she had the car, she had the boat, she had the flat screen TV. I mean, all that good stuff. She had the Bose stereo system. She had it all going on. Man, and she even had people that would mow her yard and do that kind of stuff outside. She had it going on, and she named her sons. She had 2 sons, and I want you to go with me. The names of these sons are Mahlon. The first one's name is Mahlon, and that word in Hebrew, that name in Hebrew means dance. So you can realize what's going on when she has this son. She's like, this is my son. Look, it means joy. You don't dance because you're unhappy. You dance because you're joyous. It means joy. My son has brought me joy. I rejoice. I found my rejoice. And then her second son's name is Kilion, and his name means in Hebrew completion. So she's away from home. She's in a foreign land. She was joyous, and her life was complete. It was all going well. Now she has returned to Bethlehem, and she's lost her joy. She's lost her rejoice, and she is incomplete. And she says, don't call me Naomi anymore because I'm not a pleasant person to be around. If you get around me, I'm probably going to bring you down just a little bit. So don't get around me. But I want you to notice with me in verse 22. I want you to notice something that's going on in verse 22. She came to Bethlehem at the time of the harvest beginning. So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law with her, she returned from the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the harvest time. Now I want you to know something. Not during, not in the end, because let me tell you, everything comes to a head at harvest. All of our resources are gathered at the harvest. Everything comes in. Our money is made at the harvest. Our input is gathered at the harvest. God puts us in places for strategic times. He puts us places for those reasons. He put them here because it was at the beginning, not at the end, not during the middle. In other words, they're just starting at the harvest. What that means is there's plenty. There's plenty, and you can have some of, even if it's leftovers, it's plenty. So in those days, if they didn't do something or gather during harvest, they didn't have anything for the coming months until harvest again. So they had to harvest this and that and this and that in order to have what they needed throughout the year. So there's plenty to do during the harvest. You walk in, you say, I don't see anything that needs to be done. Well, that means we're working hard to make sure it looks that way at Christ Point Church. You say, I don't see anything needs to be done. Yes, there's plenty needs to be done. There's plenty of hands that need to be on deck. There's plenty of people plenty of positions that need to be filled. You say, well, why aren't we doing this? Well, that's why, because we don't have somebody there yet. See, there's plenty to do during the harvest, and I want you to know we're in the harvest. We're in the harvest right now, and the harvest is beginning, and we're in the beginnings of the harvest. So we've got an opportunity that maybe we wouldn't otherwise have. We got opportunities that generations before us didn't have. There's plenty of leftovers during the harvest. See, but they needed a redeemer. See, I'm going to tell you about this redeemer. Naomi had a kinsman. She had a relative, and his name was Boaz. So Boaz was a man. He had some holdings. He had property. He had people that worked for him. So he had some type of status in the community. And see, he had fields. So we know that. And he had people that worked for him. Ruth followed behind the harvesters. She followed behind and she picked up scraps from what they had left over. Now, the custom in those days was not to pick the fields clean, to leave these for the gleaners. To glean means to gather or to pick up or to assemble. So they would glean behind that. So that's what that glean, when you say, I gleaned from the Lord, I gathered from the Lord, they would glean behind them and they would pick up the scraps. The first fruits went to the owner, but the scraps, and they were kind enough to let them do that. So they picked up the scraps, and Ruth did that. She said, you're no woman, you're not going to be able to take care of yourself. I'm going to go do that for you. You don't have a son anymore, and you don't have a husband. I'm going to be your workforce. So she went into the fields, and everybody was hearing about it. She went into the fields, and she began to pick up from daylight till dark. She stopped only to get a drink of water or to rest, and she worked for her mother-in-law. This is a woman that she has connected herself to and said, you're connected to me. I don't care who says what. I am going to stay connected to you, because you notice what she says here. Your people will be my people. So she is associating herself with Boaz and saying, look, you are my people. So she says, Boaz, my relative, has fields, so go on. And she finds favor with Boaz. Boaz spots her right out and says, who's that woman? Who's that lady? Man, I want to know who she is. I have identified her right out of the gate, and I see her right out. And she stood out to me. There's just something about her. I say this all the time, and I hope I'm not, Tina walked by and said, man, there's just something about that chick. And I just say that to her just to aggravate her. But he's like, man, there's just something about that woman, man. There's something about that woman. And he has a conversation with her, and we're going to look at it in just a second. But this is very important. See, Jewish custom kind of says that a male relative could become a redeemer to someone in stress or in distress or in trouble or in danger. They could become a redeemer. What a redeemer means is they are protection for them. They take them under their wing. They are literally, it is one who delivers or rescues. They could even marry a widow if need be, because their custom would say, this man's family line needs to continue. It doesn't need to stop. So it is important that you marry this woman and that you continue that bloodline for that individual that has passed away. So it can only be a male, and it is a male kinsman redeemer. So if you've ever heard the term kinsman redeemer is referred to the book of Ruth. So Boaz is a kinsman redeemer. See, but Naomi's got something brewing. I love the way that the older women work. I love the way that the folks, when they get a little bit more mature. My pastor was one of them. He hooked so many people up. You don't even know how many people he hooked up. He just would say, hey, why don't you go here? Come on, hook you guys up. Next thing you know, they're getting married. He was good at it. Naomi she's got a plan brewing. She's got a plan brewing, and Ruth don't know it yet. But she's about to put on the dog. It's just about to go down. She don't know it yet. So let's look at chapter 3, verse 3. Let's look at chapter 3, verse 3. Wash therefore. Now this is Naomi talking to Ruth. Wash therefore and anoint yourself. I mean, that right there gets me. Who the heck has to tell some woman to take a bath? Wash therefore and anoint yourself and put on your cloak and go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. There's more story going on here. Basically, this is what she says. You've been in the fields working, you're sweaty, you got dirt all over you, under your fingernails, you look like death eating a cracker. Wash yourself, put on some perfume, and put on the dog. I mean, that's what she's saying. Put you on some clothes that look different than them old rags you've been wearing. Put yourself some clothes on, wash yourself, put on some perfume, and put on the dog, because we're fixing to find you a husband. That's how it's going to go down in here. We're going to find you a husband. So I want you to notice with me, and going backward to chapter 2, Ruth chapter 2, verse 8. I want you to see what, in this conversation that Boaz is having with Ruth out in the field. Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter, do not glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women." So this is what he says. You're a pretty lady. You're a fine woman, and everybody in the town knows of your story of how you're taking care of your mother-in-law. Awesome, over the top, wonderful woman. But I want you to know, don't glean from another field. Don't go somewhere else. You stay connected in this field. Do not leave this field. And then he tells her in verse 22. Would you look what he says in verse 22? Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go out with this young women, lest in another field you be assaulted." In other words, he's saying, stay in this field. Stay in the field of the Redeemer, because you could very well be assaulted in somewhere else. I can protect you here. This is what he's saying. I can protect you. I can, and the term is spread your wings over. She tells him, spread your wings over me. That means give me covering. There's no assault. Let me tell you something. There's no assault within the fields of the Lord. There's no assault. I'm going to tell you, and if any of us in here have been assaulted physically, or we've been assaulted mentally, or we've been assaulted spiritually, it's because that person that did the assault was operating outside of the fields of the Redeemer. God don't anoint people to attack you. That's on them completely. God don't anoint people to assault you. That's on them. You say, "Well, I was in the house of the Lord. I was walking with the Lord." They wouldn't. So you don't think. I'm going to tell you straight up. I don't care if it was prominent pastor in your life. If they attacked you and they attacked you with malice, they were outside of the fields of the Redeemer. And I've had it happen to me, and I'm going to tell you that's exactly the way it is. People don't. If you are humbled yourself before the Lord, then there is no assault. So let's go back to Ruth. Let's go back to Ruth getting all fancied up. Number one, I'm going to kind of break this down. Scholars say that she was dressed in mourning clothing. That means she was dressed in her grave clothes, her funeral outfit. She was dressed in her mourning clothing because of her dead husband and her situation. So she was broadcasting that I am a servant to my mother-in-law. I am mourning for the loss of my husband, my brother-in-law, and my father-in-law, and I am just here to support my mother-in-law. So she is in a state of mourning. She's dressed as such, and she's letting the public know so. Number two, Boaz is a respectable man. He is a man of honor. He has holdings in the community. He is a very prominent man, and he's a very respected man. He is not, number three, he is not going to make advancements on her while she is wearing the clothing that she is wearing. Not because it's not attractive to him, but because it is sending out a message that I am unapproachable. Do not approach me. Do not, anybody with any respect. I am in mourning for my husband and my family and my situation. Number four, he has instructed her to remain under his protection. You take as long as you need. But I'm going to tell you something. You stay under my umbrella of protection. You stay close to my young women who are workers. When I eat, you eat with me. When I drink, you drink with me. When I sit down at the table with my harvesters, you sit down with the harvesters. You're not going to be treated like the others. And when you need a drink, you go to the well and you drink whenever you want, whatever you want. You're going to be treated well because I am honored to be able to say that you are my friend and that you are my kinsman. So he has instructed her to remain under his protection because, number five, others would see the mourning clothing and they would say, number one, they would come to a conclusion, she is alone, she don't have a husband, she is vulnerable, and they would assault her. So I'm going to tell you right now, don't get out from under the covering of the Lord. Stay under the covering of the Lord. Don't try to get out and do things on your own outside of the Lord. Well, I don't need the Lord. And I was listening to a guy this morning, and he said, I don't understand. Somebody loses their job, and they say, I'm going to quit church because I don't have a job anymore. I'm mad. I'm upset. I've never understood that either. That's been always kind of weird to me. But the others would see her. You stay under my protection. Number 6, it's time for her to put on the dog. It's time for her to put on the dog. She goes in that night. Naomi sets this up. I couldn't find it. I don't know if it was Jewish custom or what, but I'm going to tell you how it laid out. She says, you go lay at his feet. Fix yourself up. I'm going to kind of give you 2018 terms. Wash, get the grease out of your hair, put some makeup on, and for the love of all that's holy, don't smell like a man. Put some perfume on, and get them clothes off. You don't look too good with them on. Put something on that looks nice. And she goes into him, and she lays at his feet, just like Ruth planned it. And then when he turns over in the night sometime, he says, somebody's laying at my feet, not by my side. That indicates an advancement. But she lays at his feet in respect and says, in the Message Bible, it says, I'm ready to be your wife. That's what it says. And he looks over at her, and he sees Ruth in a different way than he's ever seen her before. And he looks at her, and he says, man, she's smoking hot now. This woman looks different. She's smoking. She don't look like one of the guys anymore. And she don't wear grave clothes anymore. She's not wearing grave clothes anymore. And you know what? She don't smell like one of the guys anymore. And she looks different. She has let her Redeemer know that she is available. She's let her Redeemer know that she's ready to be free. She's let her Redeemer know that she's no longer in mourning. See, I want to bring this thing home now, and I want to get real as I can get. You say, what have you been doing up to this point? I want to bring this thing home. I want to get real. Folks, I'm going to tell you, mourning time is over. Mourning time is over. It's over. It's done and gone. Bitterness is behind us. You know, it no longer has any root. It no longer has any root to grow or any ground or healthy ground to get into. It's time to put on the dog.
Hello guys, Pastor Steve here, Christ Point Church, and I really hope you enjoyed the service today. I appreciate you viewing. I would like to invite you personally to be a part of the services at 9 and 11 a.m. on Sunday mornings. We're located on the square in Sparta, Tennessee. So just want to say to you, we're real people, living real lives, serving a real God. Welcome home. Good to see you.